When the old warnings were first archived, they were treated like folklore dressed in bureaucratic language, ancient cautionary statements logged by extinct councils and forgotten empires, all of them repeating the same oddly specific recommendation that humanity should be observed, respected, and never cornered. And for centuries, a modern galactic compact rolled as collective eyes at those entries because humanity appeared late, fractured, technologically uneven, and painfully sentimental. A species that argued internally more than it expanded externally, and so when the Terran systems petitioned for limited observer status, they were granted it with patronizing smiles and quiet jokes shared across translation buffers. And the humans noticed, of course, because they always noticed tone even when wrapped in politeness. But they said nothing and signed the accords and smiled back because restraint was something their species had learned the hard way long before they ever reached the stars. And the galaxy mistook that restraint for weakness, which was a first mistake, because the warnings were not about human strength in the way empires usually measured it, but about human response, about how they reacted when pushed beyond a line that varied by culture yet always existed. And that context was lost on the modern councillors who saw only population numbers and fleet tonnage and dismissed the Terrans as another promising but ultimately manageable newcomer, and so trade routes were drawn that cut through soul buffer space. Patrols lingered longer than agreed, inspections became invasive, and when a human ambassador quietly objected to the council, recorded it as procedural friction rather than a signal, and across human space analysts watched the trend lines and wrote reports filled with cautious language and historical comparisons that few outside their own species could fully appreciate, because humans carried memory differently, not as myth alone but as data reinforced by cultural scars. And when the outer colony of Hestia reported its first unauthorized boarding by a Krelith enforcement cruiser, the local commander filed a protest rather than firing, because the standing orders were clear and because humans still believed the galaxy could be reasoned with, and the Krelith officers laughed at the protest and logged the colony as compliant. And that laughter echoed in human archives alongside older sounds from older wars that no alien historian had ever bothered to study deeply. And the second mistake followed naturally from the first when the compact authorized a demonstration of authority to remind humanity of its place, a limited action framed as enforcement but executed with the casual arrogance of a civilization that had never been seriously challenged by a species it considered emotionally unstable and strategically naive. And when the Krelith task group entered Hestia orbit and disabled orbital infrastructure with precision strikes, meant to impress rather than annihilate, they broadcast their actions across public channels, and billions watched as a human colony went dark, and in council chambers a reaction was muted approval because order had been maintained, while on Earth the reaction was silence of a very different kind, the sort that preceded storms in human history. And committees convened and data flowed, and no one raised their voice because humans did not shout when the stakes were existential, and the old warnings resurfaced then, pulled from dusty archives by junior analysts who noticed pattern convergence and submitted reports marked urgent. And those reports were read and not dismissed, because humans had learned the cost of ignoring uncomfortable truths. And across Sol, the quiet retooling began under the cover of routine maintenance and scientific exchange. And alien observers noted the activity but misinterpreted it as panic or symbolic defiance. And when the council issued a deadline for compliance, the human ambassador listened, nodded, and asked a single clarifying question about the definition of compliance, and the council answered with confidence because it believed definitions were power, and the ambassador returned home and delivered the answer verbatim, and somewhere deep beneath the crust of Mars' decision tree resolved itself, not into rage but into inevitability, because humans had seen this shape of moment before even if the names and stars were different, and the warnings had always said the same thing, that humans would endure insult and loss longer than expected, that they would negotiate even when negotiation hurt, but that once convinced the other side would not stop, they would commit fully and without drama, and the galaxy had just convinced them. And far from the council chambers where laughter still lingered, fleets that had never existed on public registries began to move, not in grand formations, but in precise, almost surgical dispersals, while diplomats continued to speak calmly and traders continued to trade, and the compact congratulated itself on stabilizing a potential problem, unaware that the prize had already begun accruing, and that the old warnings had not been prophesied but invoices, and humanity had finally decided it was time for the galaxy to pay. The galaxy had long regarded humanity as inconsequential, a minor species inhabiting an insignificant blue planet on the edge of the Sol system, their technology dismissed as rudimentary and their culture trivial among the advanced civilizations that dominated the stars, and yet no one had truly looked closely, For the humans had always been content to appear ordinary, to allow alien observers to underestimate them, a trait that would soon prove catastrophic for anyone who assumed superiority. And the first indication of change came not with fanfare or warning, but quietly, almost imperceptibly, when the Grixian survey fleet, a sleek armada renowned for its ability to map and dominate new worlds, reported anomalies in Earth's orbit, fluctuations in the planet's electromagnetic field that defied known physics, subtle energy discharges that no sensor had previously been able to explain. And at first, the Grixian commanders assumed these readings were errors, malfunctions of instruments, or minor atmospheric phenomena. Yet the patterns persisted, growing in intensity each passing day, and the humans remained outwardly oblivious, continuing their planetary routines, sending probes to Mars, refining their nuclear fusion reactors, launching satellites that, to alien eyes, seemed primitive but operated with a sophistication that was quietly unprecedented. And while the Grixians debated the significance, other species of the Galactic Assembly, the Aulani, the Safari, and the Kytha, dismissed Earth's activities with laughter, convinced that no civilization with simple chemical propulsion and short-range communication could ever pose a threat, unaware that humanity's true strength was not visible on the surface, and it was in the quiet laboratories, the unassuming military installations, and the hidden orbital platforms that the humans had constructed networks of technology so advanced it bent known laws of physics. From gravity manipulation arrays to near-instantaneous quantum communication channels, all designed not for show but for preparation, an unspoken anticipation of a universe that had ignored them for too long. And the first act that revealed their capability to the galaxy occurred when the Grixians, impatient with what they perceived as delays in human cooperation, deployed a reconnaissance frigate into orbit with the intention of coercion, its sleek hull glinting under the sunlight as it approached the atmosphere, expecting no resistance. Yet the humans responded in a manner that no alien intelligence had predicted, not with aggression at first, but with precision. As a single, nearly invisible beam of coherent energy enveloped the ship, dismantling its propulsion systems while leaving its crew unharmed, a calculated demonstration that humanity had control over matter and energy at a level that could unmake any vessel without a trace of collateral damage. And the Grixian command was thrown into chaos, their officers shouting, arguing, attempting to comprehend the sudden disappearance of a fleet they considered invincible, while the humans communicated only a simple message, transmitted through channels that bypassed all known encryption, a warning and a declaration that Earth would not tolerate infringement, that humanity had observed the galaxy long enough, and that those who assumed they were simple would soon learn the consequences of miscalculation. And as word spread across star systems, other species watched with growing alarm as Earth began to move with deliberate, coordinated efficiency, sending automated defense platforms into orbit, activating quantum-cloaked satellites that could monitor every corner of the Sol system, and even as the Galactic Assembly debated whether to intervene, humans extended quiet diplomatic offers to neighboring systems that had been historically oppressed or ignored, offering protection in exchange for alliance, revealing a calculated strategy that combined restraint with overwhelming capability. And the first open engagement occurred when a Kytha survey squadron attempted to map a nearby asteroid belt for resources, only to find their instruments jammed, their ships subtly nudged by unseen gravitational fields, and entire formations rerouted without warning, demonstrating command over physics that defied comprehension. And it was then that the whispers began, the murmurs throughout galactic corridors that humans were not what they seemed, that their simplicity was a veil, a deliberate misrepresentation of power. And as weeks passed, the humans continued their patient, deliberate displays, combining acts of mercy with demonstrations of power, rescuing stranded alien vessels caught in cosmic storms, yet simultaneously neutralizing threats with exacting precision, creating a psychological impact greater than any open war. And the alien fleets began to hesitate, their arrogance replaced with uncertainty, a creeping dread as they realized that every assessment they had made about humanity had been flawed, that the species they considered primitive was in truth a civilization of unmatched strategic foresight, adaptability, and technological mastery, and nowhere was this more evident than when humanity revealed its first true defensive construct, a network of orbital stations that could manipulate gravity and shield entire continents from bombardment, each station powered by a quantum core capable of energy outputs that rivaled the sun. And yet humanity presented it not as a weapon of aggression, but as a safeguard, a subtle message that they would defend themselves and their allies without compromise, and the effect on the galaxy was immediate. The alien diplomats suddenly finding their negotiations more cautious, their fleets reluctant to advance, their commanders aware that any misstep could trigger consequences they could not imagine, and in the midst of this, humans continued their research, their exploration, sending vessels beyond the local star cluster with cloaked propulsion systems, silently observing galactic politics, calculating risks, preparing contingencies, all while maintaining the appearance of ordinary life on Earth, children playing in parks, scientists debating theories, engineers constructing devices that seemed mundane yet held capabilities beyond comprehension, and it was this duality, the combination of outward simplicity and hidden sophistication, that marked humanity as unpredictable, uncontrollable, and, in the eyes of a galaxy, terrifyingly capable. And when the first attempt to coerce Earth failed, when a fleet underestimated the human coordination and was neutralized without warning, the universe began to truly understand that everything had changed overnight, that the species they assumed simple had become the arbiter of consequence, the keeper of deterrence, and that humanity's era of underestimated potential had ended, and from that night onward, the stars themselves seemed to watch humanity differently, not with condescension or derision, but with cautious respect, the knowledge that any attempt to dominate, deceive, or provoke would no longer be met with patience, and in every council chamber, on every command deck, in every corner of space, the same message resonated. The humans were no longer simple, and the consequences of ignoring them would reshape the galaxy forever. As the galaxy slowly absorbed the reality of humanity's sudden emergence as a dominant and unpredictable force, the ripple effects reached every corner of known space, causing debates, panics, and secret maneuvers among civilizations that had once assumed Earth posed no threat. And it was in this climate of uncertainty that the humans began to expand their influence strategically, not with conquest but with careful calculation, sending envoys to systems that had been quietly oppressed by larger empires, offering technology, medical aid, and knowledge that immediately elevated local populations while simultaneously creating networks of allegiance that strengthened humanity's position without firing a single shot. And while these diplomatic efforts were deliberate and public, the true scope of humanity's preparation remained hidden in orbital shipyards, underground research complexes, and autonomous habitats beyond the reach of any sensor arrays, where engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to refine weapons that were never intended for aggression but for deterrence, ships that could move faster than light without detection, defense systems capable of neutralizing multiple fleets simultaneously, and AI networks designed to predict alien behavior with unnerving accuracy. And it was during this period of preparation that the first real test came, when a coalition of minor empires, emboldened by centuries of human dismissal, decided to challenge Earth's rising influence, sending a fleet of carriers, destroyers, and assault craft toward the Sol system with the intent of forcing submission, and the humans responded not with panic but with methodical precision, activating a coordinated defense grid that engaged the fleet in deep space long before it reached planetary orbit, using gravitational distortions, targeted energy pulses, and cloaked drones to disrupt formation and communications. All while human warships remained largely unseen, striking only at precise points to maximize disruption and minimize unnecessary destruction, and as the alien commanders struggled to comprehend the sudden collapse of their fleet cohesion, Earth broadcast a message through every frequency, every quantum channel, every medium the invaders could receive. Simple yet chilling. Aggression against humanity would not be tolerated. Resistance will be measured with exacting consequences, and any attempt to harm the weak or innocent will be met with the full scope of human capability. And this declaration was not an empty threat, for as the battle unfolded, entire alien vessels were immobilized, their engines twisted by gravitational manipulation, their weapons neutralized by electromagnetic pulses, yet the human forces ensured no lives were unnecessarily lost, a deliberate demonstration that strategy, restraint, and power could coexist. And the psychological impact was immediate, sending shockwaves not just through the attacking coalition, but across every observer civilization, who suddenly realized that humans had mastered a level of warfare, logistics, and control that defied all prior assessment, and it was in these early engagements that humanity's reputation solidified, not as conquerors but as precise, unstoppable protectors, a species that combined ingenuity, foresight, and the willingness to act decisively. And while the aliens reeled from the unexpected efficiency of the humans' defense, the humans themselves were already planning the next phase, not of expansion or retaliation, but of preparation for what would inevitably come, understanding that the galaxy would not remain passive, and therefore creating contingency fleets capable of independent operation across multiple sectors, with each ship equipped with adaptive shielding, predictive AI, and propulsion systems that allowed instantaneous repositioning, while simultaneously Earth scientists developed communication networks capable of instantaneous contact with allied systems, ensuring coordination even across vast interstellar distances. And it was this combination of visible action, protective intervention, and unseen technological advancement that forced the galaxy to reassess its understanding of humanity, and rumors spread of humans saving entire planetary populations from natural disasters, intervening quietly to stop ecological collapse, neutralizing cosmic hazards, all while maintaining a stance of diplomatic neutrality. Yet every act reinforced the message that humans were both benevolent and supremely capable, and this duality, the ability to protect and to annihilate with equal precision, began to shape alien perception, instilling caution and fear where there had once been mockery. And as the months passed, alien intelligence networks reported a startling trend. Civilizations that had once considered Earth irrelevant were now redirecting resources to understand human capabilities, to negotiate carefully, or to avoid confrontation entirely. And even the oldest and most arrogant members of the Galactic Assembly began to recognize a hard truth, that humans were not merely another species to be catalogued and dismissed, but a force of nature, unpredictable, patient, and extraordinarily intelligent. And in the midst of this quiet revolution, humans themselves continued daily life with remarkable normalcy, children learning, scientists experimenting, engineers constructing, diplomats negotiating, all while the infrastructure of a galaxy where civilization grew invisibly behind the scenes, and when a minor incursion occurred on a distant colony system sent by opportunistic mercenaries testing human resolve, the response was swift, coordinated, and devastating in its efficiency, neutralizing the threat without unnecessary loss, rescuing civilians, repairing damage, and leaving a clear, unmistakable message to any who might think to challenge them. And by the time the first major alien powers attempted to assert dominance directly, humanity was no longer reactive but fully prepared, a civilization whose patience had been mistaken for weakness, whose restraint had been mistaken for submission, and whose seemingly simple existence masked an intelligence, strategy, and technological capability so advanced that the galaxy had no framework to anticipate human action. And as the first large-scale confrontation unfolded, with multiple fleets converging near the edges of the Sol system, human forces moved with surgical precision, cutting supply lines, isolating command ships, disabling entire formations without a single ship being lost. And in every encounter, humanity demonstrated that power without conscience, control without restraint, and strategy without error could coexist. And alien observers began to whisper in disbelief that the species they had once thought simple was now the arbiter of galactic consequence, the measure by which all others would be judged. And in these months of escalating tension, the stage was set for a revelation that would not merely surprise the galaxy but redefine every understanding of power, diplomacy, and the potential of a species that had been underestimated for centuries. And by the time the first full-scale council convened to address Earth, the humans had already demonstrated the impossible, that a single species, patient, intelligent, and resolute, could shift the balance of the entire galaxy overnight. By the time the Galactic Assembly formally convened to address the human situation, a term that had spread through every diplomatic and military channel with a mixture of disbelief and dread, the humans had already established a network of allies across previously overlooked systems, not through coercion but through carefully calculated acts of aid, protection, and generosity, offering assistance to worlds ravaged by conflict, famine, and natural disasters, while simultaneously deploying orbital surveillance platforms that ensured the security of these allies and the rapid detection of any threat. And this combination of soft power and strategic defense left the galactic powers scrambling, realizing that humans could manipulate both diplomacy and warfare with unmatched efficiency. And the Assembly, composed of centuries-old empires that prided themselves on their wisdom and dominance, found themselves confronted by a delegation from Earth that appeared modest, composed of humans in simple attire, yet their calm, precise statements carried the weight of absolute confidence, announcing clearly that humanity would not accept threats to themselves or their allies, that all actions would be measured with precise consequences, and that miscalculations would be met with outcomes no other species had ever experienced. And while the delegates spoke without raised voices, without dramatic displays, their presence alone conveyed an unspoken warning, reinforced by the subtle movements of fleets in orbit, AI-controlled drones gliding silently through space, and defensive satellites cloaked in invisibility, a network so sophisticated that the Assembly had no method to fully observe or counter it. And as deliberations proceeded, the humans began to reveal glimpses of their capabilities, not to provoke but to demonstrate that restraint had limits and that patience, when combined with strategy, could yield power unmatched in the galaxy. And the first demonstration occurred with the activation of gravitational field projectors across multiple sectors, small in scale but precise enough to alter the trajectory of asteroid clusters, forcing fleets to rear out, supply lines to falter, and even the most confident commanders to pause in uncertainty, and whispers began to spread through the assembly chambers that humanity's true technological mastery had been deliberately concealed, that the species they had long dismissed as simple had been, observing, learning, and preparing for centuries, combining intelligence, adaptability, and patience into a force that was simultaneously invisible and omnipresent. And while the larger empires debated in panic, smaller systems, previously subjugated or ignored, openly aligned with humans, swayed by demonstrations of protection, the prevention of disaster, and the restoration of devastated worlds, a diplomatic strategy that had immediate military consequences, as coalition fleets found themselves facing both human ships and allied reinforcements they had not anticipated, and it was during this period that the first direct challenge arrived, when a Kytherian war fleet, emboldened by confidence in their superior numbers and weaponry, attempted to blockade a system under human protection, intending to force a surrender. Yet the humans responded with measured decisiveness, deploying advanced drones capable of precision strikes, disabling engines and weapons without loss of life, while their own vessels maneuvered with speed and unpredictability, demonstrating a mastery of space combat that was previously thought impossible. And in the process, humans not only protected their allies but sent a message to the galaxy that aggression against them would always be met with calculated consequence. And in the weeks that followed, the story of this engagement spread like wildfire, not through propaganda but through undeniable evidence. Entire fleets neutralized without catastrophic destruction, planets protected, civilians unharmed, and alien commanders left scrambling to comprehend a force that could act with both mercy and unstoppable efficiency. And as humans continued to consolidate their position, they began to implement advanced communication networks capable of instantaneous coordination across multiple star systems, linking fleets, research stations, and diplomatic envoys into a single, responsive, and adaptive system, allowing decisions to be made in real time, with accuracy and foresight unmatched by any other civilization. And while the galaxy watched in awe and fear, human engineers refined propulsion systems to allow instantaneous interstellar travel over distances that had previously required months or years, all while cloaked and undetectable, a capability that removed any element of surprise from potential aggressors while ensuring humans maintained initiative. And as the first major assembly debate escalated into near panic, with alien leaders arguing over whether to contain, negotiate, or preemptively strike, the humans maintained composure, their quiet confidence unsettling in contrast to the frantic gestures, raised voices, and desperate calculations surrounding them. And then came the first revelation that truly altered the galaxy's perception. Humans had begun deploying autonomous observation vessels into regions previously thought unreachable, capable of monitoring political, military, and technological developments across multiple sectors simultaneously, relaying information instantly back to Earth and Allied command structures, ensuring that any action taken by other civilizations could be anticipated, countered, or manipulated before it became a threat. And the cumulative effect of these preparations, demonstrations of power, protection of the weak, and precise interventions created a psychological shift across the stars, instilling respect, fear, and cautious cooperation where arrogance and dismissiveness had once prevailed. And even the most ancient empires began to understand that humans were no longer a species to be underestimated, that their apparent simplicity had been a mask for extraordinary intelligence, strategy, and technological mastery, and that every decision made by the galaxy from that point forward will be measured against the standards set by humanity, a species whose patience, foresight, and capability had reshaped interstellar politics and military strategy. Overnight, and as the first signs of coordinated human-alien collaboration began to emerge, the universe could no longer cling to old assumptions, and slowly, inexorably, the reality became clear to every corner of known space. The humans had arrived, fully prepared, supremely capable, and infinitely unpredictable, and the consequences of ignoring them will be felt for centuries to come, altering the balance of power, diplomacy, and survival across the galaxy, marking the beginning of an era that no alien civilization would ever forget, an era defined by the intelligence, restraint, and calculated might of a species that had long been dismissed as simple, yet now ruled the perceptions of every sentient being that observed them. The realization that humanity could no longer be underestimated spread rapidly through the galaxy, and with it came a combination of fear, respect, and a grudging curiosity as even the most powerful empires scrambled to reassess their strategies, while on Earth, the humans themselves remained calm, methodical, and remarkably patient, fully aware that perception could be as powerful as technology, and they continued to operate with dual priorities: the protection of their home planet and allies, and the gradual demonstration of capabilities that had been carefully concealed for centuries. And it was during this period that the first coordinated humanitarian intervention occurred, when a distant system was threatened by an unstable star on the verge of collapse, and human fleets arrived silently, their presence undetected until they had stabilized the star's magnetic fields using advanced gravitational manipulation, while simultaneously evacuating populations and reconstructing planetary infrastructure using automated drones capable of instant repair and terraforming. And this act, though peaceful, sent a ripple across the galaxy as alien civilizations observed that humans had mastered a level of engineering and control over natural phenomena that no other species had even approached. Yet humanity's restraint remained deliberate, as they did not occupy, conquer, or dominate, choosing instead to leave the systems intact while quietly monitoring them for future threats. And the psychological impact was profound. Species that had long considered humans irrelevant suddenly recognized that Earth was no longer merely a planet but the center of a network of influence, protection, and technological superiority that could not be ignored, and the Galactic Assembly, which had convened to discuss containment or punishment, found itself paralyzed, its leaders uncertain how to respond to a species that could both protect and neutralize with equal precision. And it was in this climate of tension that the first direct confrontation with a major galactic power occurred, when the Aulani Empire, confident in their numerical advantage and advanced weaponry, attempted to seize a strategic star system under human protection, deploying hundreds of capital ships in an overwhelming formation. Yet the humans responded not with panic or desperation, but with calculated efficiency, activating cloaked fleets positioned light years away, manipulating gravitational fields to separate enemy formations, neutralizing weapons with precision-directed electromagnetic pulses. And while the aliens struggled to maintain cohesion, humans executed coordinated strikes that immobilized ships without destroying them, demonstrating control over conflict at a level that transcended conventional understanding. And the result was immediate. The Aulani commanders, accustomed to rapid victories against less advanced species, found themselves outmaneuvered and outthought at every turn, forced to retreat while minimizing casualties. And throughout the galaxy, observers watched as humans consistently demonstrated restraint, choosing to neutralize threats while protecting lives, a combination that inspired both fear and admiration. And as reports spread, a new pattern emerged, with multiple empires secretly establishing channels to negotiate with Earth, recognizing that cooperation with humanity offered survival, advancement, and protection, while opposition guaranteed defeat. Yet even as humans cultivated alliances, they continued to refine their technology, deploying fleets capable of instantaneous travel, advanced AI networks predicting strategic developments, and autonomous repair systems that allowed long-term sustainability without supply lines, all operating under strict human oversight, ensuring precision and preventing errors. And the duality of human action, peaceful yet decisive, restrained yet overwhelmingly powerful, began to reshape galactic politics, forcing even previously dominant empires to reconsider centuries of strategy, treaties, and assumptions. And it was during this time that an ancient species, long believed extinct, emerged from the shadows, revealing historical records that hinted at humanity's true potential, recounting tales of civilizations that had once feared human ingenuity and survived only by respecting the species' intelligence and adaptability. And these revelations, coupled with visible demonstrations of human capability, created a tipping point, as the remaining empires realized that centuries of underestimation had left them dangerously unprepared, and when the next attempted aggression occurred, a coalition of smaller powers aiming to exploit perceived gaps in human defense, the humans responded with absolute precision, neutralizing threats across multiple systems simultaneously, rescuing affected populations, and reinforcing defenses without a single loss of life among their own forces. And by the end of this engagement, the galaxy had collectively internalized a single, unavoidable truth. Humans were not only supremely capable, but strategically patient, ethically precise, technologically unmatched, and utterly unpredictable. And in the midst of these events, humans continued their quiet expansion into interstellar diplomacy, observing galactic conflicts, resolving crises, and extending aid when necessary, always maintaining the delicate balance of demonstrating power without tyranny, mercy without weakness, and intelligence without arrogance. And by carefully calibrating each action, each intervention, each demonstration of capability, humanity had reshaped the perception of power itself, establishing a new standard in which restraint, foresight, and adaptability were as formidable as fleets, weapons, or colonies. And as the Aulani, Kytha, and other major powers convened to discuss future strategy, the same realization crystallized. Across the galaxy, the species they had dismissed as simple had become the measure of consequence, the arbiter of deterrence, and the ultimate demonstration that patience, intelligence, and capability could redefine the balance of power overnight, leaving every civilization aware that any miscalculation, underestimation, or act of aggression would now carry consequences previously unimaginable. And as humans continued to operate with quiet efficiency, the galaxy began to understand that the era of simplicity had ended, replaced by an era defined by calculated foresight, disciplined power, and the knowledge that the humans, once ignored, were now the defining force across the stars, shaping not only the future of their own species, but the destiny of every civilization that shared the cosmos. As the galaxy grappled with the undeniable reality of humanity's supremacy, human influence continued to expand in ways that were subtle yet absolutely decisive, leveraging diplomacy, technology, and strategic intervention simultaneously to shape outcomes across multiple star systems. And while alien powers debated how to respond, humans quietly implemented networks of observation and defense that spanned light years, ensuring not only that threats could be anticipated, but that aid could reach systems in danger before a crisis fully manifested. And it was during this period that the first large-scale demonstration of human interstellar coordination occurred, when an unstable planetary alliance threatened to collapse under internal conflict and resource shortages, and humans deployed a combination of autonomous mediation drones, adaptive AI governors, and cloaked fleets to stabilize the situation, neutralize internal insurgencies with surgical precision, and restore essential infrastructure, all while leaving local governance intact, demonstrating an unprecedented understanding of political dynamics, ethics, and tactical application. And news of these successes spread rapidly, creating a new psychological paradigm among alien civilizations that had previously considered humans incapable of large-scale influence. And as humans continued to protect vulnerable species and systems, they simultaneously revealed strategic mastery in military arenas, executing complex operations that utilize gravity manipulation, energy projection, and quantum coordination to incapacitate hostile forces without unnecessary casualties. And it was in one of these operations, when a coalition fleet attempted to blockade a resource-rich star cluster, that humanity fully unveiled the scale of their preparedness, deploying multiple fleets that moved in perfect synchrony across hundreds of light years, striking with timing so precise that entire alien formations were rendered inoperative before they could react. And as alien commanders scrambled to understand how humans had anticipated every possible maneuver, humans offered only a measured communique through unbreakable quantum channels, stating that aggression was unacceptable, that protection of the innocent was mandatory, and that any further attempt at coercion would be met with consequences of equal scale and precision. And this demonstration sent shockwaves through the galaxy, as every civilization realized that humans had mastered not only technology and strategy, but also the art of psychological dominance, combining restraint, intelligence, and absolute certainty in execution to redefine what power meant. And while humans continued to operate with calm precision, the galaxy saw rapid shifts in alliances as weaker or oppressed species sought human protection, and former aggressors re-evaluated priorities, withdrawing forces, opening channels of negotiation, and even covertly adopting technologies that had been shared through observation or selective aid. And as these dynamics unfolded, humans revealed another layer of capability, developing advanced predictive models that allowed them to anticipate political, economic, and military shifts across hundreds of systems simultaneously. And while this information could have been used for domination, humans chose instead to leverage it for protection and stability, further reinforcing their reputation as a species both powerful and judicious. And in one striking example, when a neighboring star system faced invasion by mercenary fleets hired by a minor empire seeking profit, humans deployed adaptive defense systems that neutralized threats before they could engage, coordinated rescue efforts for civilian populations, and rebuilt damaged infrastructure, demonstrating the ability to project power across multiple light years while simultaneously preserving life. And as these interventions continued, the galaxy's perception of humanity shifted from that of a simple, insignificant species to a standard against which all civilizations measure their own capabilities, morality, and strategic thinking. And even the most confident empires, who had once assumed humans could be coerced or dismissed, began to operate with caution, recognizing that any miscalculation could result in swift and irreversible consequences. And amidst this, humans continued their own internal development, refining propulsion systems for near-instantaneous travel, deploying fleets capable of independent decision-making with AI oversight, and creating energy networks that could stabilize entire star systems, all while maintaining the appearance of ordinary life on Earth, where scientists debated theories, engineers constructed new devices, and diplomats negotiated quietly a dual existence that concealed extraordinary preparation behind mundane appearances. And the culmination of these efforts became evident when a coordinated test of human response occurred as multiple alien powers simultaneously probed human defenses with small-scale incursions to measure reaction time, and in every instance, humans neutralized threats with unparalleled efficiency, preserving lives, resources, and systems, while simultaneously demonstrating capabilities that left alien observers scrambling to understand the limits of human technology, strategy, and foresight. And as the months passed, the galaxy slowly came to a collective realization: humanity was not only capable of defending itself, but of shaping the destiny of entire regions, of protecting the weak, and of imposing consequences that were precise, unavoidable, and strategically calculated. And even the most ancient and arrogant species began to recognize that the humans they had dismissed as simple were now the ultimate arbiters of power, morality, and survival in the galaxy. A species whose combination of patience, intelligence, and absolute precision had reshaped the rules of engagement, diplomacy, and conflict. And as human fleets continue to patrol, human scientists continue to innovate, and human diplomats continue to negotiate, the galaxy understood that everything had changed, that humanity's era of underestimated simplicity had ended, and that the species that had once been ignored now defined the terms of consequence for every civilization across the stars, leaving the universe in a state of cautious awe, respect, and quiet fear, fully aware that any miscalculation, any act of aggression, or any underestimation of humans will be met with consequences that no other species could withstand, and that from this moment forward, the galaxy would never again view Earth as simple, irrelevant, or inconsequential. With the galaxy fully aware that humanity could no longer be underestimated, the humans shifted from reactive demonstration to proactive influence, establishing networks of observation, diplomacy, and protection that spanned hundreds of star systems. And while no human fleet aggressively invaded or occupied alien territory, the mere presence of their coordinated forces, cloaked intelligence platforms, and autonomous defense systems created an invisible architecture of deterrence that fundamentally altered interstellar power dynamics. And in this period, humans began to reveal the scope of their strategic foresight, not through grand displays of destruction, but through subtle, precise interventions that neutralized threats, prevented catastrophes, and preserved life, demonstrating a mastery of consequence that no other species had ever achieved. And when a coalition of formerly dominant empires, the Aulani, Kytha, and Safari, convened secretly to discuss coordinated action against humanity, They discovered that humans had anticipated the move, quietly intercepting communications, positioning fleets at optimal locations, and using predictive AI to simulate every conceivable scenario, ensuring that any potential threat could be neutralized before it became actionable. And it was during this tense standoff that humans first demonstrated their ability to manipulate space-time on a localized scale, redirecting energy flows, gravitational fields, and even subspace. Channels to immobilize entire fleets, rear out supply lines, and protect civilian populations simultaneously, all while maintaining precise control to avoid unnecessary loss of life. And as alien commanders scrambled to understand the sudden appearance of forces that seemed to anticipate every move, humans calmly issued a communique via unbreakable quantum channels, stating that their goal was not conquest but protection, that aggression would be met with calculated consequences, and that any species attempting to harm the innocent would face the full measure of human capability. And this message, coupled with their actions, reverberated across the galaxy, shifting the balance of perception from fear of unknown humans to awe at a species that had mastered restraint, intelligence, and power simultaneously. And while these developments unfolded, humanity quietly extended aid to systems previously subjugated or abandoned, restoring infrastructure, stabilizing governance, and providing access to technologies that enabled rapid recovery and long-term sustainability, all executed with precision that left alien observers questioning how a single species could achieve such coordination across such vast distances. And it was in the midst of these efforts that the first direct test of human alliance capability occurred, when a previously neutral system faced a surprise incursion by mercenary forces seeking to exploit perceived weakness, and humans responded instantly, deploying both visible fleets and cloaked drones to neutralize the threat, evacuating civilians, repairing damage, and maintaining control of the region with a degree of efficiency that left the invaders powerless and the galaxy stunned. And as the mercenaries were driven back and their sponsors forced to withdraw in disbelief, the reputation of humanity solidified not as conquerors, but as precise, unstoppable protectors, a species whose ability to act decisively, predict outcomes, and protect the vulnerable simultaneously had no precedent. And it was during the follow-up operations that the full scale of human technological mastery became undeniable, as humans demonstrated propulsion systems capable of near-instantaneous travel across multiple sectors, energy projection, and gravitational manipulation sufficient to immobilize entire fleets, and predictive AI capable of anticipating political, military, and social developments across hundreds of star systems, all coordinated with perfect timing to ensure maximum effect and minimal risk. And in every engagement, humans balance restraint with power, demonstrating that a species could enforce consequences without unnecessary cruelty, defend the weak without overextension, and operate across the galaxy without losing cohesion or strategic clarity. And as these operations continued, the Galactic Assembly convened once more, now fully aware that humans were no longer a minor species but a central force shaping interstellar politics, diplomacy, and military strategy. And during these deliberations, humans offered alliances and protection to systems that had suffered under oppression, creating an unprecedented network of loyalty, trust, and shared security, while their presence alone discouraged aggression from even the most ambitious empires. And through all of this, humans maintained normal life on Earth, with scientists exploring, engineers innovating, diplomats negotiating, and civilians living seemingly ordinary lives. Yet behind this facade, the full infrastructure of interstellar dominance, prediction, and defense operated flawlessly, and by the time alien powers attempted coordinated military actions again, humans had already neutralized multiple threats in advance, protected allied systems, and demonstrated that any miscalculation, any act of aggression, or any underestimation would be met with consequences so precise and overwhelming that no empire could risk direct confrontation. And in the months that followed, the galaxy recognized an immutable truth. Humanity had shifted from a species dismissed as simple to a civilization whose intelligence, foresight, and capability redefined the standards of power, strategy, and morality across the stars. And as fleets, empires, and diplomats adjusted to this new reality, it became clear that the humans were no longer merely participants in galactic affairs. They were the defining measure of consequence, a species whose patience, precision, and omnipresent influence ensured that the rules of the galaxy had been rewritten overnight, and that any civilization attempting to ignore, provoke, or underestimate humanity would face outcomes unlike anything previously imagined, marking the irreversible rise of Earth as the central arbiter of power, strategy, and protection in a galaxy forever altered by the species it had once believed simple and inconsequential. By the time the galaxy fully grasped the scale of humanity's influence, it was no longer a question of whether humans were powerful, but how every species would adjust to a reality in which Earth dictated the terms of consequence, diplomacy, and security. And in the months that followed, humans continued to consolidate their position not through conquest but through careful, deliberate actions that reinforced their reputation as both protectors and enforcers, establishing networks of support, intelligence, and rapid response that spanned sectors and light years, while simultaneously maintaining the appearance of ordinary life on their home planet, with scientists advancing understanding, engineers innovating technologies that defy conventional physics, diplomats negotiating with patience and precision, and civilians living in a society that appeared calm, orderly, and unassuming, and yet every action taken, every fleet positioned, every system aided or protected, was part of an intricate web of influence that ensured humans remained steps ahead of any potential threat. And when the Olani Empire, still reeling from prior engagements, attempted a coordinated strike in an effort to regain dominance, humans responded with a seamless combination of direct intervention, predictive maneuvers, and advanced technology, neutralizing the threat with surgical precision, protecting civilians, and leaving the invaders incapacitated without unnecessary casualties. And as word of this operation spread across the galaxy, alien civilization could no longer cling to old assumptions, their prior arrogance replaced with awe, fear, and cautious respect, and even the Kyther and Safari, long regarded as the most formidable powers, began openly acknowledging humanity's unmatched strategic foresight, technological mastery, and moral restraint, realizing that any attempt to provoke or underestimate humans would result in irreversible consequences. And amid these shifts, humans continue to cultivate alliances, offering protection, knowledge, and aid to systems that had previously been vulnerable or oppressed, creating a network of loyalty and mutual support that further strengthened their position, while reinforcing the perception that humanity's power was inseparable from their intelligence, foresight, and ethical approach. And when minor incursions or opportunistic attacks occurred, humans neutralized them with the same precision, simultaneously defending the innocent, preserving infrastructure, and demonstrating capabilities that seemed indistinguishable from omnipresence. And as alien observers watched fleets maneuver, AI systems calculate outcomes in real time, and gravitational and energy manipulation redefined space itself, the realization became unavoidable. Humans had rewritten the rules of the galaxy, proving that restraint, intelligence, and patience would be as formidable as fleets, weapons, or armies, and that their power was not measured merely in technology, but in the mastery of strategy, consequence, and moral calculation. And it was this dual mastery that ensured humans remained unpredictable, feared, and respected across every system, sector, and council. And as centuries-old empires convened to discuss strategy, they could do no more than acknowledge that the species they had once dismissed as simple was now the standard by which all others would be measured. And in the quiet of space, as human ships patrolled borders, stabilized systems, and coordinated interventions, the galaxy began to internalize profound truth. Humanity's patience, foresight, and precision had created a new order, one in which aggression against humans or their allies carried inevitable, calibrated consequences, one in which protection of the weak, rapid response, and technological mastery defined strength, and one in which the underestimated species that had once been ignored now held the ultimate authority over outcomes, morality, and survival across the stars. And as alien civilizations adjusted their policies, alliances, and perceptions, Earth remained a center of calm, methodical operation, with humans continuing to explore, innovate, and protect, demonstrating that true power lay not in domination but in the combination of restraint, strategy, and absolute capability. And in this era, the galaxy finally understood the truth. The humans were not simple, they were not weak, and their emergence had irrevocably reshaped the cosmos, proving once and for all that a species underestimated for centuries could, overnight, redefine the rules of existence, the balance of power, and the meaning of consequence in a galaxy that would never again view them as anything less than the ultimate measure of intelligence, strategy, and force. And with that understanding, every civilization, fleet, and counsel across the stars knew the same unshakable reality. Humanity had arrived, fully aware, fully capable, and forever dominant in ways that no one could have anticipated, marking the definitive rise of Earth as the center of interstellar influence, the keeper of consequence, and the ultimate arbiter of survival, morality, and power in a universe that had long dismissed them as simple.